Okay, good. So I'm going to speak briefly about the toxicity of the COVID vaccines, in particular of the mRNA vaccines, because these are now the predominantly used ones worldwide. They have two components. One is the messenger RNA, which contains the blueprint, in this case for the spike protein that occurs normally on the surface of the virus particles. And the idea is to sneak this messenger RNA into our own body cells in order to have them make the actual protein to which the immune response, the system then responds. Okay, good. The second component is the lipid nanoparticles, right? These lipids, fat-like molecules, they encase the messenger RNA, and they serve two purposes. One is to protect the messenger RNA while it is in transport, and secondly also to help it enter the body cells. Okay. Now, there are several different components, and one of them is so-called cationic or electrically positively charged lipid, is known to be quite toxic. That's actually a general property of these cationic lipids. They tend to, once they are inside a cell, to disrupt the mitochondrial respiration, the cell respiration, so that is the activity of a certain organelle inside our cell that's responsible for consuming oxygen for producing energy. Okay? If this activity is disrupted, then the oxygen is not reduced all the way to water, but instead to some intermediates, which are called reactive oxygen species. These reactive oxygen species, as the name suggests, they can react with anything, including with DNA, so they can inflict damage on the DNA in our body cells. Now, that is actually something that also occurs with ionizing radiation. Right? If you apply gamma radiation or X-rays to a person, typically for the sake of treating cancer or lymphoma, something like that, then this is what happens inside a cell. The ionizing radiation will break up water into reactive species, including reactive oxygen species, and these will then in turn inflict damage on the DNA. This is how radiation works. Right? Radiation first splits water, and the reaction products then cause, in a chemical mechanism, damage to your DNA. Now, we have to assume that just as with radiation, there is a total dose limit, total lifetime dose limit that you can survive, that this also applies to these cationic lipids, which we find in the vaccines. And what that means is the total lifetime dose of these messenger RNA vaccines that you can tolerate before you die is limited. We don't know the exact amount because there are simply not enough experimental data, right? That's actually one of the great scandals of these vaccines, is that no proper toxicity studies have been carried out before these were rolled out and applied worldwide to the population. But in principle, we can be quite certain that the total dose of these vaccines that you can tolerate before you die is limited. Whether it's 10 shots or 20 shots or 8 shots, nobody knows. And it will be somewhat variable, just as with radiation it will be somewhat variable. There is certainly an extent of individual variation, but in principle everybody will have their own limit beyond which you cannot go. Okay? Now in this context it is interesting to note that both Moderna and Pfizer are now working on very substantial pipelines. They want to use this mRNA vaccine technology not just against COVID, but against just about anything, including against some viral diseases, which will be reactivated. Very many people actually carry those viruses in their body, but normally the immune system keeps them under the thumb. But if the immune system is weakened, this will be one effect of this cationic lipid toxicity. These viruses will break out again, and then we will be offered these mRNA shots to counter these virus infections. So which means that you will actually accumulate this toxicity further. But because regardless of which particular antigen is being targeted, right, the delivery technology, these lipids will always be the same. at least in principle. So we will have we will be stuck with that problem. So this is really a technology designed to poison people. It's really no two ways about it. That is my considered opinion as a medical doctor, working in biochemistry, teaching pharmacology and toxicology. Okay, so this is my considered opinion on this topic.